My Life Between Lives story from Newton-trained Institute practitioners.
I see a whole change in the thrust of searching for answers about who we are and why we're here. And I think it's wonderful, and I just hope the movement continues to expand.
Let us expand the universal consciousness together with a My Life Between Lives story presented by the Michael Newton Institute.
Welcome to my LBL Story. This is Ikamananda. I am your host. Today my special guest is Elizabeth Drew Lockhart. Elizabeth has a Bachelor of Science in Medical Technology, and she brings over 30 years of clinical laboratory experience. She has also earned a Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. As a Reiki master and teacher for the past 23 years, she also practices hypnotherapy and specializes in past life regression and life between lives therapy. Over the past decade, she has been the sole owner and operator of Mariposa Hypnotherapy, splitting her time between Maine and Arizona. She served as the chief editor of the Michael Newton Institute's quarterly journal, Stories of the Afterlife, from 2018 to 2020. A big, warm welcome to Elizabeth.
It's good to be here. When there's a wound in a past lifetime, that's what can cause imprints. Say someone comes to see us who has intractable pain in their shoulder, for example. We go back to a lifetime that's in their highest healing good, and they find themselves on a battlefield and someone's stabbing them with a saber, and so there's that pain that hasn't been found in their current lifetime, in their current body, and yet it's persistent pain, and it's the soul's way, I believe, of reaching through and saying, hey, pay attention to this pain. This needs to be released. It's something that needs to be worked on, resolved, let go of, and this will lead to healing. And of course, when you're on a battlefield, it's a pretty highly emotional time. And there are also other factors, say, I'll never be able to return to my wife and my children. And there's this emotional pain that kind of wraps up into that physical pain and psychological pain and even spiritual pain. And there may be agreements that we make with ourselves, like, I'm never going to get close to anybody again because it's too painful to lose them, or too painful if they leave, or too painful if I am injured and can't get back to them. So it's kind of a complex weaving of the emotion, the psychological, the thoughts around that, even the spiritual angst, and the physical body kind of takes it on. I believe that when we're incarnated, those things that we need to work on constantly say, hey, pay attention to me. This is where we need to work. This is what we need to work on and heal from. And that can help guide us. Different diseases such as asthma, perhaps someone drowned and was breathing in all of the seawater, and as they're dying, I can't, just the difficulty in breathing, and I'm never going to go in the water again, or I'm never going to swim, or so they come into another lifetime and they're terrified of water, terrified of boats, and they may have asthma from the emotional angst that kind of seated itself in the lungs and the heart area. So it can be really complex. It's always fun and interesting to help clients unravel the mysteries behind certain illnesses or certain fears, things that are getting in their way of having a beautiful, happy lifetime. Of course, there are always challenges on Earth anyway for for having a happy, healthy lifetime. And yet, this work that we do, I feel, is just so revealing and so healing for clients. And I also love when clients are able to reconnect with a lost loved one. That is an amazing and healing experience too, because when you lose someone that you love dearly and deeply on the physical plane, there's this little kind of human message that I'll never see them again. They're gone forever. And so during Life Between Lives sessions, if clients wish to connect with, say, their lost mother or their lost husband or child, even I've had that experience reconnecting with my child and with my mother. This reconnection is so sacred and so healing, and it instills such a sense of joy and knowing that we go on even when our physical body gives out. So that's a really beautiful experience that I love. So I do
Thank
see
you.
people who are grieving.
You shared a bit of a message in the group chat, in the MNI group chat. This might be very, very emotional for you to connect to your mother, and was that your son, right? Your son
Yes.
through
Yeah.
LBL. Would you like to share a little bit of that experience?
Sure. It was interesting. I just had that desire. I was in the soul state myself. So I was light, and that's how we are in the soul state. We're light, different vibrations, different vibrational frequencies of light. I had the desire to see my mother, and immediately, no time or space, immediately she was before me, and there was this beautiful light sky blue color, and I just knew intuitively it was her. And then she showed me her young woman's face, and so I'm like, Mom. And we weren't able to connect a lot of back and forth conversation because she was in the middle of teaching a class. There were about 12 younger souls lined up, not in desks, but you could see the little lights kind of lined up, little white lights. And seeing her as a teacher, I completely understood, because in this lifetime she had been heavily involved with Alcoholics Anonymous, and she had helped many women help them to get sober and stay on the path. She was really involved. She was a sponsor. She would lecture and be involved with different meetings and on the national level even. To see her as a teacher, counselors are teachers, sponsors are teachers. We're all teachers, really. But it warmed my heart. And she said, she always used to say, I love you forever and always. And I heard her say that. Of course, in the spirit realm, it's not like hearing with your ears. It's like hearing with your being, hearing with the center of your being. So I received that message, and it was really comforting. And the same thing with my son. I wanted to see him. He died at 30, and he always loved to draw figures. He always loved to draw worlds. He was quite a creative person, and yet he struggled with clinical mental health issues. So it was difficult for him to live what one would call a normal life, in and out of jobs, and the schizophrenia. He would not take his medication and go off into a different world, and you just never knew what would happen. And so anyway, when I wanted to see him, I saw him. He was also a very light blue light. He always looked so good in blue and light blue as a living person, and I kind of wondered if that had something to do with his spiritual colors. So he was standing at an easel and he was creating beings or characters, if you will, and worlds that they could inhabit. So very, very creative. And he turned and showed me his young man's face. And so I knew for sure it was him. I mean, I knew in my heart, but to see his young man's face was really meaningful. And I noticed how contented he was. And he did not want me to blame myself, saying that I had done everything that I could to try to get him help. And he also was deeply grateful that I allowed him to travel his path, that I allowed that rather than having him institutionalized, which I thought about doing on and off for many years. He was really grateful for that. He also explained that he had had several lifetimes where he had been very wealthy and powerful and handsome and intelligent, had everything going for him. And he had been unkind to those who had handicaps, whether they were mental handicaps or physical handicaps. He had been rather cruel. And he chose to come into this lifetime with mental handicaps to experience what that was like. It enhanced his experiential learning as a soul. So he considered it very valuable. He was really, truly grateful for that. And then, of course, I was grateful, that I hadn't done the wrong things, because under those circumstances in a human lifetime on Earth, you can feel like you're really failing as a mother. Yeah, to hear his side of that, to feel his side of that was very comforting. And to see that he was very contented in what he was doing, and that was very healing for me.
Thank you for sharing that very touching stories. There's
Thank you.
a lot of story can go in the hardship that he struggled, and perhaps you struggled too. I have a brother who, when he was young, he also suffered from schizophrenia. Truly, sometimes I feel speechless by just have that innate knowing. You know everything's going to be fine.
Yes. Yes,
And
yes, all is well. All will be well. I believe this work enhances your ability to accept conditions and trust the process. We do the best we can, of course, and sometimes our best is better, sometimes at other times, but I believe that it helps us to let go and trust the universe, trust our guides, trust our higher soul selves. Trust is a huge, huge benefit of this work, I believe.
absolutely. What I commonly see in the clinical practice is people they have doubt, and even when they connected to the source energy, to the higher self, to the council team, everything's there. Everything's spoken by themselves. They just begin to speak, right? They begin to answer my questions. The healing is happening. The inside wisdom and downloading is instant.
Yeah.
Change. The energy is shifting. So what I normally say is, we are downloading this light, and we're absorbing your darkness. And it does happen.
Yes.
In the healing room.
Releasing the connection.
The connection
That's
that you
okay.
had with your mother, with your son, are particularly healing. How it helped you with healing, as in what emotions you were experiencing. The sadness, the losses, the guilt, feel like I didn't do enough to stop him going. And this sort of emotions. Maybe anger as well. Anger that he or she left at the wrong time. She's not supposed to leave yet. And how
Yeah, yeah.
did the session help you with releasing those emotions?
Truly helped me release them by knowing on such a deep level at my very core that they were fine. They were doing well. They were out of pain. They were doing what they love to do, following their soul's purposes. It helped a lot. I mean, I still miss them. And then I remember, I remember where they are and how beautiful the soul realm is, and how, wonderful it is that they're pursuing what they love to do. And they're not alone. there are so many souls, around with them, and that they love and love them. And so it's a beautiful thing. I know that they're in a beautiful place. And I also am somewhat relieved in that, for example, my mother didn't have to go through the COVID pandemic. My son didn't have to go through that. The different political upheavals and wars and these occurrences on Earth that can really kind of make you feel sad and frustrated and scared and all of those human emotions. I'm so glad that they didn't have to go through any of that, and they were spared in a sense, and they're in a good place. So that is a comfort.
Yes, the connections. Would you say that the soul planned their own death if they end their own life?
Sometimes it's kind of a spontaneous plan. The way I understand it, as if you think of time in linear time, which of course in soul time, all time is now. In terms of linear time, which is what we experience on Earth, there are exit points that we may decide, okay, this is a good time for me to leave. And then at times, for emotional burdens or psychological upheavals, there may be, or even physical illness that the soul has decided is just too overwhelming. There may be times where we spontaneously decide. So I feel like it's kind of a balance of fate and destiny, and also free will, of course. Yeah, I have had quite a few clients who have committed suicide in other lifetimes, and who also have tried to commit suicide in their current lifetime, or have a lot of suicidal ideation. And it can be so helpful to go to those past lives. I always say something like, going back to a lifetime that's in your highest healing good to experience and explore, very spirit guided. So they may go back to a lifetime where they've had, just lived under terrible circumstances, say as a slave who was beaten, just a really difficult lifetime, and how the slave found a way, to end their life. It was just too unbearable for them. We do a lot of healing, releasing interventions, and of course, with the help of the guides, the Council of Elders, others, healing teams at times. And I have had clients report back that they're no longer thinking of killing themselves, that, life is, it's not all perfect and easy, but that they feel like they have the resilience because of what they've learned about their souls and about their spirit guides, the fact that they are always loved, always supported, that they're never alone on this journey, even though they may feel like it in not having a lot of human connections. And of course, a lot of people connect with animals, with their pets, because pets can be so unconditionally loving and non-judgmental. And pets, I have found, come into sessions fairly often, which can be a really beautiful experience. Having lost some pets myself, I know how connected you can feel with them, and to know that they go on as well is really healing. Yeah. I know that a lot of people believe that animal spirits cannot incarnate into a human form. And yet I have found that some do. Some animal souls have been in human bodies before. So, and that's not a bad thing. It's all about learning. It's all about experiential learning.
How
Oops.
wonderful. So many people did ask me about their pets, if they've met the pets in their past lives, stuff like that. And the insights that downloading from the session are absolutely total healing.
Mm-hmm.
That all of your
Yeah.
confusions, your misunderstanding, illusion or delusion, whatever that might be, it can be all just cleared out at ease.
Mm-hmm. The
I wanted
truth.
to particularly thank you for sharing your stories, your connections with your mother and your son. And sometimes it's a bit of it's itchy. It's private and it's confidential, and
Oh,
we're in the place so vulnerable. We don't know
yes.
where to look for help, if there's somebody could help us, and we don't want us to be shown weak, incapable,
Right.
incompetent in managing this place of a mess or struggle altogether.
Right. It's difficult to learn to be vulnerable. It really is. That closes us off, though. It does. The fear of being vulnerable closes us off from so much, from closeness, intimacy, from connecting on deeper levels with people. And yet, I find that you have to be kind of selective too with who you are open with and sharing with and trusting with. You have to be careful. Just because we're on planet Earth and we're in a physical body, and you have to. I tell my clients that the ego is very helpful because it helps us navigate the physical realm and be safe. And yet, if the ego becomes too overpowering and kind of closes us off and acts as a block, it's not as helpful. It's important to be able to release that ego mind, that conscious mind, especially to do this work, to achieve those altered states and be able to really let go and trust the process, trust that you're going to be fine, that you are fine, that kind of thing. Because a lot of people are afraid of things like hypnotherapy and other ways of altered states. Finding altered states can be kind of frightening. Will I lose control? That kind of thing.
Well, controlling is this one major thing that we're here to learn to just let go.
Yes.
I learned that myself too, and we have this tendency, women or men.
Yeah.
Household needs to be organized this way. Husband needs to behave like that way. The son needs to behave like that way.
Expectations.
Part of the conditions that we just let it go when we accept the condition and we learn to uncondition the self.
Yeah, and I feel like that leads to more contentment and stability, really, because I feel like most of us don't like to go off, becoming angry and or losing emotional stability, becoming sad and crying. There's a time and a place, of course, for both, but it is really important to keep sight of that inner balance, connecting with your soul, turning inward and trying to resolve things there before we, freak out. Because it isn't good for us physically to freak out either. Inner balance, connecting with that, with your soul, turning inward and trying to resolve things there before we, freak out. Because it isn't good for us physically to freak out either.
Yeah.
So,
I wanted to wonder if you might want to be keen to share your near-death experiences. We have a few colleagues who had, but we have not got that deep insight. Would you like to
sure.
share about your near-death experience?
Sure. Now, keep in mind, I was 5. And so there are certain things that are indelible that stay with me. And there are some details that I may, not remember clearly. I was with my father and my mother and my cat on a boat. We had been visiting our grandparents who lived on an island, and my dad was a lobster fisherman, and he had pulled into the harbor. There were ramps, wooden ramps, planks, areas where, you would leave the boat and walk up the ramps and be on the wharf and, then go to your car. I was running up and down one of the ramps, and, my father had no sooner said, "Don't run, you'll fall." when my left foot caught on a cable, and I went, the wharf was fairly high up because it was lowish tide, maybe not low tide, but medium. And it seemed like an enormous height for me. So I went plunging into the water, and of course I couldn't breathe. I was breathing in water, and I panicked at first. And then this deep feeling of peace just washed over me, and I was still conscious. I felt so peaceful, and my soul self actually spoke to me and said, "Well, Beth," that's my nickname for Elizabeth. "Well, Beth, I guess this is it. It's time to go." And so I was like, okay. And I did see a light that I was planning on making for, traveling to that light. What really stays with me, though, was that extreme feeling of peace, that all is well, all will be well. There's no need to panic, just let go. And then my father jumped in and pulled me out. And so then I was like, coughing and trying to breathe, and I was sick for a couple of weeks because of all the water was not very clean. There was all sorts of dead fish and oil and gasoline near the wharf, and so I was really sick. But I believe it was that feeling that this is it, all is well, and that deep feeling of peace that's lingered all of these years.
This is it. This is something that we have been talking lately with my spiritual master. This is it. And people who aren't very spiritual ask me, what do you mean this is it? Where to begin with this explanation? It's total acceptance and total peace, which you experience, your near-death experience. And now I believe that it's all in you, on you, and in the daily, every single moment that you live in with total peace.
It's accessible. It really is accessible. I believe it is there. And I just have to, try to not let outside events and sources of trouble, try not to let that ruffle me or agitate me. So there are certain things that I avoid, like loud noises if I can. I don't like loud noises, or I'm not one who likes to go shopping and having a whole bunch of energies around me because I'm very empathic. So I surround myself with light, which really helps. It helps a lot, but there's still that frenetic kind of energy that I avoid. So, and then of course, people who make us feel really anxious or less than or criticized. There are people in my life who are like that I love them, but I have to love them with some space between us. I can't spend a lot of time with them. Yeah, self-care. We have to figure out how to take good care of ourselves. What we like, what we don't like, what's good for us, what's not good for us, those kinds of things.
The physical and energetic boundaries is important and necessary to
Yes.
keep us in the shining zone, because I do realize the body has its own limitation. We have to respect that and accept that.
Yes. It can be a little hard that way too. For example, I'm in my 60s now, and I remember the days in my 30s and 40s and even 50s where I had so much energy, physical energy to do things. And now I have to say, well, that's not really important. I can let that go. We have to, you're right, we have to set boundaries and figure out what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and not should on ourselves. Like, I believe it was Albert Ellis, a psychologist, that always stuck with me when we studied him. And he would say, now don't should on yourself. Just accept yourself where you are, where you're at. It's okay.
Yes, it's okay. Everything is going to be okay. And so, how did becoming an LBL therapist help you to realize your purpose or in your mission in this life?
Wow, it was the past life regression, the first one I ever did. Luckily, I was under the supervision of Sophia, Paul's wife, Sophia Kramer. It was totally unexpected. It wasn't, it was a past life regression kind of modeled that way, and yet after the death scene, she immediately went to an LBL experience, and I, of course, hadn't studied how to help her navigate that, and Sophia helped me a lot with that. But ever since that experience during my past life regression training, how has it changed me? It's phenomenal when you realize that we go on, that this is a costume. This is a physical shell, if you will. I kind of like the word costume, though. We shed the costume and we continue on with all of our memories and a lot of our emotions, although those are often transmuted into higher emotions rather than the heavier emotions like grief and sadness and anger and all of those things. They're transmuted. We're aware of them, and yet we choose the higher frequency emotions like love and gratitude and joy. How has it changed my life? In so many ways. I'll have to say that from the time I read Michael Newton's books, I found them life-changing. Just knowing that we all go on, and even our beloved pets go on. I think it's the law of thermodynamics that no energy is ever lost. It's only transformed.
Nothing is being lost. Once we know energetically from the bottom of our heart, then we're not concerned about whatsoever was happening in the physical realm.
Exactly. And it helps us to learn to have faith and to trust, the whole process.
And the whole healing, the therapy work that you're doing, combine the Reiki, hypnosis, past life regression, life between life therapy to find purpose, which you just launched a book called Finding Purpose.
Yes, that was quite an endeavor.
Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for the next part of our conversation. love and light.